professional drummer here in Nashville, Tennessee. And what I like to do every week is just get on here and talk with some of my audience, answer any questions, tell them what I've been doing for the week, and really just give everybody an insight into what it's like living in Nashville, working as a professional musician, and kind of using myself as an example, because there's a lot of people out there that really want to make that leap into professional music and really want to make a leap into Nashville, and they think it is unattainable. And what I like to do is really just use myself as kind of like a guinea pig or a demonstration. Like, this is what happens when you have a dude, some random dude who hasn't played in years, move to Nashville, and then all of a sudden say, you know what, I'm going to pursue a career in music. And that's what I really like to do. I like to kind of document everything I do along the way to show everybody what it's like climbing up the ranks, the highs and the lows of living, working in Nashville, and climbing the ladder of being a professional musician. So yeah, and if anybody has any questions, this is really what this is for. So feel free to pop on, ask questions at any time. I'll answer them when I can. And one of the things is, hey Mojo, one of the things I like to do is, because I'm so busy during the week, I can't always answer comments on the videos, but I really like to give my time to everybody here. Also like to thank Mojo. For those of you who don't know, Mojo Murphy, you search him on the internet. He's helped me with a lot of videos. He really helped me a lot with that Cameron Jane video this week. And I think, last week, and I think this week I'm gonna try and get a video out with him in it, because he actually came to visit me with his friend and general in the Cat Dad Army, Brad Allen. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, he really helped out with that interview. And if you had a chance to check it out, or if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it's on my channel. It's an interview with Cameron Jane. And that was probably about a 90-minute to 2-hour conversation. And Joe and I, we whittled it down to about 40 minutes, just really focusing on the important things to like get people what they need and the information that, yeah, the insights. And we got Dan joining us from Utah. Dan, good to see you. Glad you're on here. Dan is thinking about maybe moving out to Nashville in a year or so. And Dan, were you able to get the real drums in the church, or are they still giving you the acoustic kit? I mean, the electronic kit. And so if you have any questions about living, working in Nashville, being a musician, feel free to chime in here. And as I was in the shower today, I was thinking about my conversation from last week and how right as I was signing off, I believe someone had a comment where they were saying that something like, that's on my do not play list. Like, I'm never going to play that on a gig. I think it was something like Devil Went Down to Georgia or Wagon Wheel, some kind of like, tried and true, that song that we've all played a million times and we're sick to death of. And that really got me thinking, because I wanted to say, yeah, you're not going to work very much. And I still believe that if you have that attitude, but what works for one person may not work for the other. And I was curious why that person said that. And I'm never going to say that is absolutely right or wrong. So I'm always interested in hearing why people say I'm never going to do that. But as I found, me personally in my experiences, as there was things that I would not tolerate when I was younger. I would not tolerate other musicians being late, even 5 minutes. I would not tolerate another musician not knowing a song. It was, even if I was right, it did my career no favors. And I found that as I've gone deeper into my career and become more flexible, and I just roll with everything, it's really helped my opportunities. And yeah, we have Mitchell Pierce joining us today as well. Okay, great. So Dan has used the acoustic kit in the church. That's freaking awesome, Dan. And yeah, I think that's one thing on acoustic kits in volume, one thing that I've really noticed in Nashville is that when I play quietly, softly on acoustic kits, people absolutely love it. And it's a rarity to be able to play softly and with control and dynamics. And so many times when us as drummers or guitarists, we like to really shred, show off, play loud and fast because it's fun, right? But I found that if you develop the skill set that you can play at a very quiet volume, and you can take your notes and play about maybe half of them, and play that at like half the volume, that is an immensely employable skill to have. And me playing acoustic kits, some of the stuff I really play softly. When it's like some more like the old, like, traditional country western stuff, I play it really softly. And a lot of musicians really enjoy that and appreciate that. And that's never a sexy skill, especially for drummers, to work on. Playing quiet, playing soft, playing slow. But if you're able to do that well, that is going to pay so many more dividends than being able to play fast and loud. So real quick, we have the Void Walker says, I want to learn piano. Can you please give me some suggestions where to start from? And I would suggest all musicians know how to play piano. I would suggest all musicians kind of have an idea, concept of harmony and music theory. And so somebody's asking, where do they start from with piano? Well, that's a great question. And that's all relative. Like, do you understand anything about music theory? Do you play any other instruments? Any melodic instruments? Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you need, but I would say you can never go wrong hiring a teacher. And a lot of people think that they can do it on their own, they can learn on their own, but and some people can, but having a guide gets you there a lot quicker. I would say never hesitate to invest into learning about your craft, and yeah, hesitate into learning music. Yeah, and Dan says they started the first service with hot rod, second service was told to use regular sticks. Said it sounded great. That, again, Dan, that's great. And that's something that you kind of like need to stay on your toes going forward. Like, really focus on keeping that volume down. One thing I like to do is I'll put cloths on the drums, and that actually changes the tone sometimes. Or sometimes I'll like put like a big fat snare drum topper. Yeah, Mojo says learning notation will be a good step for learning piano. Yeah, so when I play piano, now if I'm playing sheet music and if I'm playing like, a piece, yeah, I'll read the sheet music. I really think about, my brain works in chords. So I think about I just think about the harmony and then think about how everything fits into that. Even when I'm playing drums, literally, like I think about like the chord changes as I'm playing drums. And really, like, I even think is like, if we're shifting from one chord to the next, that's when I do a fill, or that's when I like change from ride to hi-hat. It's really like drummers are the arrangers on the fly. That's a good point, Mojo. Yeah, but if anyone else has any questions, feel free to chime in. A couple things I want to talk about. I took some downtime this week because I was a little bit sick. Battling an infection, so I had a staph infection. I couldn't open and close my hand for a couple days. It was pretty scary and pretty nasty. All taken care of, been on some antibiotics. I started playing again this week again. Everything felt fine and great. This is the time of year though when a lot of musicians start really burning out, start getting exhausted, because this is like mile 17 of a marathon, especially in Nashville, because I walked to my gig yesterday and it was 100 degrees. And it was like at 10 in the morning. And I was soaked by the time I got to my gig, and everybody was just dead on that. Like, all the audience, everything out in Broadway felt like it was dead. And yeah, I think a lot of people, especially here in Nashville, they're feeling the grind as well, because the money's going down. And that's kind of the consensus I felt with people on Broadway and tips and all that. And one thing I was thinking about is, a lot of people get really comfortable in the way things are, or try to follow models of the way things were or things that have been working. And I was thinking this week and saying that what works today is not going to work in 5 to 10 years. Hell, what is working today may not work in 2 years or 1 year. And what worked 5 years ago is not going to work today. So we always have to be thinking about moving forward. So if you're like thinking about working within these structures and these patterns which have been established, and they seem that like they are tried and true efficient routes, chances are about in a year or two, they aren't going to work anymore. And that's just the way the music business is. It is constantly fluid, it's constantly dynamic. Things are always changing. like 5 years ago, do you think there could have been a YouTube drummer? Maybe like one or two, or like maybe like an Instagram drummer, but now there's a lot of people that are actually making a living off of it. That's not saying it's good or bad. That's just saying it's just the way things are. And I think we can learn about what works today and apply that to tomorrow. So what I've learned over the course of my career is that what works is being consistent, being patient, small amounts of efforts, and just not like expecting success to happen right away. So if you're doing YouTube, if you're trying to break into a music scene, if you're trying to break into a recording scene, don't just do it like, don't just give it a stab for a week or a month or a year. Do it for multiple years. And one thing I've been telling a lot of musicians here in town about networking is you have to see somebody in person 3 times before they're even going to remember your name. Probably about 5 to 10 times before they'll even let you sit in to take a gig, or before they even let you sit in to play a song on a gig. So these are all things that I really would like all you guys to consider. And so Lori says that people don't. Sorry, I got a little maniac here with me. He's wanting some attention. So this is my minor cat celebrity, and he is a force larger than life, and he's frequently photobombing my YouTubes. So Lori says people don't carry cash anymore. Can the bands take credit cards? That's a great question, Lori. So most bands are going to have some kind of QR code for a Venmo or for a Cash App or even a PayPal. And that's really, they'll have like a printout laminated, or some people invest into a big, kind of like just a standing poster. I'm not sure what you call it. But having that set up, I would say for all musicians, is crucial. It's super important, especially in Nashville. But also think about yourselves, depending on what your situation is. I would say like think about yourselves like a jukebox, seriously. And kind of explain to people that, yeah, we're like a jukebox. If there's a song you want to hear, put some money in. You can put it into our tip bucket, or you can send us money via Venmo, via Cash App, via PayPal. Make sure you have all this set up. And then, have somebody say like, listen, this is like, if you want us to play songs, $20. And if you just want to support the band, feel free to support the band. Thank you very much. Everybody has a shtick. Everybody has a spiel. I know a lot of artists say like, Nashville's a great place and a lot of the music here is free and it's supported by patrons, and telling people that we really appreciate your support. We couldn't do this without you. But that is really an important part about being a musician in today's modern age. Most people think it's just about music, right? And that's a big part of it. But then some people say, well, you got to do the marketing. And I think the marketing is really important. But most people only have 2/3 of that pie. And like you really have this imbalanced tripod if you only focus on two out of the 3. The third thing is money. So you could be great at playing. You could have this huge network of people following you, but then how are you going to make money? Are you selling a product? Are you doing this from live gigs? Think about ways which you can make money. Even if you are like, you don't have to be a solo artist, but just like a main musician. And so we have a question that says, are you familiar with how to watch digital tips to make sure people get their song after they tip? That's a great question, Joe. So everybody has a little bit of a different form, and it's all dependent on scale. And so if I'm playing a honky-tonk gig, it's really up to the front person, or maybe someone in the band is like monitoring those tips. And they'll see that on that Venmo, and like they'll make a mental note. Now, sometimes we can't always get to the tips, and it's unfortunate. We'll always try to play a song we'll always try to acknowledge, play a song. Sometimes things go awry, and there's like a little bit of difference of opinion. Sometimes people refund that. I'm of the camp that's like, once that money is in the tip jar, it's gone, and it's kind of a social contract thing. But usually somebody will have a screen open with a Venmo app or their Cash App and see like the requests. So Napping Weekend says, when sitting in with a band, as the night goes on, you figure out one of the members is not good enough to do his part. What do you do? Keep sitting in with them or move on? How is that handled? that's a good question. I'm trying to think. So expand upon that a little bit. Napping weekends. Are you saying that if you're sitting in with a band and you find that like the band isn't very good? Well, if the band isn't very good, you only have to sit in for one song. But if you are like playing on a gig and you are hired to do that gig and one of the members isn't that great, I mean, it's one gig. We all have to carry our weights, and sometimes we are the better member, sometimes we are the worst member. But really, napping weekends. Please tell me a little bit more about that. About like keeping singing or moving on, and because I play with especially in Nashville, there's a wide variance of musicians, and a wide variance of skills and experiences. I played on some sets where people didn't belong on the stage, quite frankly, and it was very difficult. And they were a liability being on the stage, and sometimes I'm like, listen, I don't want to make enemies, I don't want to make a scene, we'll just find a way to get through it. But ultimately, I really think that it is up to if you are, usually when I'm sitting in, I'm not the front person, I'm not running the band. Or usually if I'm playing a gig, I'm not running the band. So if the front person, the person who booked the gig, the person whose name is on the gig, it's ultimately their job to hire, fire people. If they have somebody on that stage that isn't good enough, that's on them. It's not on you. And like really knowing where your boundaries are and knowing what everyone's roles and responsibilities are. And that's not a cop-out at all, because sometimes if everybody's trying to take over the reins, we have too many cooks in the kitchen and things just get chaotic. So if I'm on a gig, I always defer to the front person, the person who booked the gig. And people say, well, what's right or what's wrong? And I say, the person who's paying you is always the right one. So think about that. I'll go from there. So Brad Allen says he has a QR code for tips, but here in St. Louis, we almost exclusively receive cash tips. We set up a tip drum and give away free stickers. Again, like, Brad, that's a great way to do it. And there is no one way to skin a cat. I hate using that term. I said many roads lead to Rome. So I think that's a great way to do it, Brad. But also one thing I want to give everybody kind of put in their head. If you're doing a gig like in St. Louis and there's not you're not playing on this strip of honky tonks, have an email sign-up list. And I know that might seem antiquated, but here's one thing I want to put in everyone's head. So we're all really invested into these social networks of YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, right? That could all get hacked one day and go away, and you lose all your contacts, right? You lose your entire audience like that. Or basically one platform owns your entire audience of what you can and can't do with that. But if you have everybody's email address and you're able to contact them in other ways outside of this network that you're kind of locked into, that gives you a lot more options in the future. But also so Brad, if you're in a band, you could also shoot out an email, say, hey, here's the link to our tickets to this upcoming show. Check it out. Maybe have a weekly newsletter. It doesn't even have to be weekly, but just having that email contact information is always a great idea to have. So curious if we have any other questions here, because I usually like to keep this open for about half hour to 40 minutes. But feel free to chime in, because really I can talk all day and jabber on like a monkey in a tree, but I'm doing a lot of videos here today, talking about a lot of different topics, talking about Post Malone's new album, talking about where my career is at this year and how, personal and professional life always seem to be seems to be a delicate balance. And also next week, I may not, please keep it an eye peeled, but next week I may not be able to do a live chat because I'm going to be on the road. I'm going to try to be at a location where I can live stream on Sunday, but I'm not exactly sure about that. So please let me know. Keep your eyes peeled. I will let you know if I'm going to be live streaming next week. But seriously, I would love to hear a question from somebody. Otherwise, I'll just chat about a few more topics that have kind of been on my mind. But please, at any point, feel free to chime in. I would love to hear from you. But what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the day is I'm actually going to be creating all my content for the week. And why I'm doing that is so that I can kind of get into this groove and have a dedicated chunk of time to like all my content and schedule it for the week. And why I'm doing that, and this maybe if you're busy, might be something you want to think about. Why I do this is I call it like batching. So I'm always like, and I like schedule it out for the week. So that way I don't have to like lose 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour every day doing my social media, answering comments. I could just do it like at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, be done with it, but have everything posted and scheduled out. And that's one of the reasons why I don't always comment right away on videos or Instagram posts, because really what I like to do is I like to keep Instagram, I like to keep Facebook, YouTube, I like to keep all of that off my phone. And that may sound a little bit peculiar or off the grid to some people, but here is why I like to do that. So I'm at the phase in my career where that I'm not going, if somebody needs to get a hold of me and they need me like right away, they're going to know my number. They're going to have an email address. They're going to have a way to contact me. And if I'm going to get a call for like the biggest gig of my life, it's probably not going to be via Facebook or Instagram Messenger or some kind of DM. And if it is, there's going to be a lot of lead time for it, right? So I don't need to answer it within a minute. And I found that having Instagram, Facebook on my phone really kind of peels back on my efficiency, takes away from me being present in the moment, and it really just, yeah, it slows me down. But if I can say like, I'm doing that at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, and everything in between is like, I'm going to be working, I'm going to be practicing. And really, I know so many musicians who struggle with practicing because they have to stop every 5-10 minutes and look at their phone, and then they get out of their flow. So I've been really like focusing on keeping social media off my phone and just responding when I can. The world's not going to end if you don't respond to a Facebook DM. Now, if you're new in a town and you're new in a scene, like when I was new in Nashville, I kept Facebook on my phone. I checked it religiously because I got a lot of gigs from there. And I can still do that right now, but I found that the gigs that I want to have, they're not putting out, hey, I need somebody in 10 minutes for it. You know, that's usually not the type of gigs I want because that's rolling the dice. Yeah, I would. So I'm not saying nobody should have it. I'm just saying like right now, like I'm focusing on doing some things. Lori's asking about stick spinning. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people stick spin. I don't know. Does that take like a lot of practice? So like I think I've just gotten used to it and I just twirl it. I'm literally just spinning circles between my two fingers. There's a couple different ways to do it, but does this get me gigs? Absolutely not. Does it do anything for my career? No. In fact, this is the first time I've ever spun a stick for anything close to music. So I would say, yeah, I mean, if you want to entertain people, that's great. So we have time for a couple questions here, and I really would like to answer some questions, or if somebody wants to talk about some things, because yeah, this is the time I really like to kind of donate this every week and give people an opportunity to chat, opportunity to share some thoughts. And there's a lot of questions people have out there that they're afraid to answer, or like they can't really just put into Google and like figure out right away, like how things work in Nashville, how you're trying to break into a touring scene, how you're trying to, break into a recording scene, questions about AI. That's going to be something I'm going to be talking about here soon. Hey, Joel. So Joel, yeah, sorry, Joel, you stopped by my live stream the other day, Joel. I was trying to stream yesterday, and it was a tricky situation, and it was a tough gig yesterday. Joel is out in Arizona, and he's saying, imagine taking a drum set on the road is a lot of work. Yeah, I would say even more is taking all my gear in and out of Broadway's Nashville, because I usually take snare drum, kick drum pedal. I will take cymbals. I will take a Pelican case. I will take a drum throne all on a cart and like wheeling through a crowd of drunken zombies at 2:30 in the morning. Never easy. Taking drum sets on the road, again, that's all really, everything is kind of different. It's some of the tours I do are backline situations. Some of the tours are like, okay, it's just DIY. Some of it's on a van, or not a van, on a tour bus. Sometimes we have a crew. Sometimes I am the crew. So it's all about, yeah. Every situation is different. So Dan is asking about the expense of living in Nashville. So Dan, I'm not an economist, and I think we'll see like the rising cost of living all across the United States. Nashville is going up quickly. It's still, so I was using it on a sliding scale from coming from Chicago to Nashville. And I find that Nashville is a lot more affordable, although it's quickly turning into a similar pricing structure. Still, Nashville is a little bit more affordable than Chicago. And there's a lot more work to have as a musician here. But in comparison to Utah, like I would suggest like look at the median income of your zip code and compare it to like Nashville, like downtown zip code 37210. Thing about Nashville is that you can get a good place about 15, 20 minutes outside the city. You know, just be prepared to drive, and Nashville is really growing. There's a lot of, it's growing, so we're having some infrastructure issues. So I would say, you know, be prepared to sit in traffic, and be prepared to like kind of look around. But I think Nashville is more affordable than LA or New York City, although it's quickly getting a little bit more expensive. Oh no shit. Okay, Kid Rock showed up at PJ. So my buddy PJ Ferguson's gig. I did not know that. That's freaking awesome. I have a video where I was on a Monday gig and Zach Brown and Jamie Johnson and Riley Green and Brock Lesnar showed up. It was quite. Maybe I'll have that video come out this week. Yeah, you never know in Nashville. Nashville is kind of an interesting place, and you just kind of have to be here to kind of figure those things out. Brad, $8 beers on Broadway. That's probably a bargain for Broadway. Trust me, Broadway is crazy expensive. You can go like a block or two the other direction. You can get beers for like half that. So yeah, Broadway is basically a tourist trap. And there's nothing wrong with that, but really what makes me think and be curious is that I can't hang out on Broadway. Even though I work there every day, I can't afford to hang out down there. And that's when I'm like, things are not going in the right direction. But again, like I was saying earlier, what is working today financially, musically, in terms of marketing your career is not going to work in a year or two. Things are like moving very quickly. And if you like cling to these old patterns, sooner or later you get phased out. So you always have to be thinking about the next thing musically or the next opportunity, and you always have to have kind of like a fallback plan. I would say have a nest egg, which is really, really tough to do when you're a musician. Like right now, I'm without a car and I'm looking for a car and I don't have enough of a nest egg to put it all cash up front. Yeah, so I would say make sure to have some cash up front, always like minimum 1 month of living expenses, ideally 6. And that's fantasy land for a lot of us because most of us are just living paycheck to paycheck. And if you want to get ahead in the music business, there's a lot of ways to do it. But instead of thinking you're going to like get rich or hit it big or waiting for your that one call, there is no one call. It's just time accumulated, building your network, building your stability, both personally, financially, emotionally. It takes some time. So I would suggest like really, really be super patient with that. So I have about like, I'm gonna have to split here really soon, but if anybody has any questions right now, please answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to be cranking out a lot of content coming up here. And again, letting people know that I come on here because I really appreciate the comments and I create for people out there. I want people to see themselves in me and me to kind of like answer their questions when I'm creating something. So if there's something you want to see, please let me know because I would love to make a video about that. I'm going to be making a video about a jam session coming up and people want to know what the jam session scene is like here. But also I would suggest watching that video I had with Cameron Jane from earlier this week. It's a little bit longer. It's chock full of really good information. And it's really giving people kind of like, this is one person experience who came to Nashville, who didn't know anybody, didn't really have anything going, and the road they took to get to where they are. And, the ups and downs, and how they were just, embarrassed, and they failed, and all these things along the way, because really, there are no overnight successes. The thing is, like, failing is one of the best things you can do if you look at what you did to fail and, like, take in all that information from it and be like, what did I learn from this, and what can I apply going forward? Brandon says, Jins? Saw him play with Jakes. He shipped drum set back home. Have you lost any equipment? I hear Jins. I don't know about Jins, but I could say that losing equipment, I think everyone's lost equipment. One thing I would suggest all musicians do is insure your equipment. I use Music Pro insurance. Thank you for that, Lori Bradford. That reminds me, I need to make that video about what to do about insuring your music equipment. In the sense that, like, you don't have to, like, I would say catalog all your equipment, insure it, just get it done. It's a pain in the ass. But if you're not ready to, like, catalog everything today, just, like, go to Music Pro, get the things insured that you're using on a daily basis, start there, and then, like, a little bit every day, just make a catalog of all your things. Like, itemize, like, for me, I itemize my cymbal stands. I itemize every drum case. I don't itemize it as a set, but I literally itemize every drum case, every drum, every single item that could possibly be lost. So that is something that I would highly suggest. I would check out Music Pro. Let's see, I got a couple more questions here that I want to get to. So Zach says, 26-year-old drummer in a super small rural town. The music scene is basically non-existent. Seriously thinking about moving to Nashville to try and do music seriously. Well, I mean, cool. What's stopping you? I would say, like, a lot of times people think when they move to Nashville or New York or LA, things will suddenly change or they'll get their big shot. And what you find out is that you are a lot of your same, there's a saying that if you move towns, it's a change of scenery, but you still take the same baggage with you. And that's not saying that Zach, that you have any baggage, but that is saying that a lot of times you take your old patterns and your old habits with you, and if you move to a new city, you have to think like a different person. You have to be ready to, like, move in some different directions. And yes, there's lots of opportunities in Nashville, and Nashville can put you out of your comfort zone. For some people, that's a great move. For some people, it's the worst move. But one thing I always said is that you can do anything in you can do anything in your town that you do in Nashville. You might have to think about doing it a different way, but you can find a touring gig. There may not be quite as many opportunities for it, and you might have to work harder and be a little bit more creative. But the internet also, like, gives you an audience. It's free advertising, free marketing. But the same tenants apply. Like, I always tell musicians, focus on these three things. You need to focus on being able to play music, your marketing, and your money. So in terms of career, if you're focusing on just one or two of those, you're going to fall apart. You really need to, like, give everyone, like, equal attention. And when you're doing so, it feels like you are not giving enough attention to any of them. So you're, like, always struggling to find that balance. But if you're in a small rural town, all right, spend some time playing music, but then, like, start marketing yourself online. Maybe create a YouTube channel about reviewing gear, or make a YouTube channel about health. What it's like being in a small rural town and trying to move to a bigger city, or trying to find more opportunities. And also try to find a way to monetize that. Maybe you can sell merchandise. Maybe you can sell access to, like, for me, like, I sell a chart of 4,000. I have 4,000 charts for sale that I use on my gigs, and I sell that to other people, and that pays for part of my income. If you're curious about that, I have it listed right here in the description. But that's one way I kind of make some money in addition to playing my music. So always think about, like, what are these things I can do in terms of music, money, and marketing. Allie Ramsey. Oh, Allie, if you guys don't know, Allie's a great, fantastic photographer in Washington, D.C. Takes a lot of great band photos, and is also very much like a musician in the sense that Allie is an entrepreneur, and she is balancing the art. She's balancing the marketing. She's balancing the money. And it can be like kind of uncomfortable when she took a leap of faith, bet on herself, but that's what she's doing. So Allie says, how do you stay motivated? What mindset techniques do you use to stay motivated in your career? The business side or self-employment can be such a tedious feeling. And Allie, I totally 100% connect with that. So one thing I want to say about like staying motivated and staying like on the entrepreneurial side, it's every now and again, like some work is like you're just pushing a rock up a hill or it's shaving a yak. You know, it is just tedious and you're just... So when I was doing rehab work with musicians, and I've said this a few times in a few different ways, but I moved to Nashville to work in rehabbing musicians with injuries. And I had a good, like, I have a background in medicine, background in music. There's not a lot of people who have background in both. And I was trying to combine the two and help musicians with who are injured and pain. And there's a big opportunity for it. And I found that when I was doing it, it was fun at first, but then I would just be miserable and I would hate doing it. And I literally would scream to myself, I don't want to do this anymore. And I eventually stopped doing that because all I wanted to do was music. Now with staying doing the entrepreneurial stuff, I absolutely hate it. Do not like it. But I'm willing to do it for music because that is my love. And that is what motivates me, trying to find that next thing. And what I really like to do, again, everyone has a different way of operating. And I can't say this is right or wrong, but I look at my goals every day. I journal every day. And sometimes I make these huge lists of things to do and I feel like a failure because I don't do all of them. So sometimes I say, listen, I'm just going to focus on 1 or 2 things today. And if I do that, great. And like, so today I wanted to work out. I wanted to play guitar for 2 hours. So I'm halfway to one of those. And then I found that if I do those 2 things, all the rest is gravy. And it seems to be like setting a really low bar for the day. But if I can do that consistently over time, results really compound. And I found that results really compound when I'm intentional with like my work and also realize that it's kind of like changing your diet. If you're eating super healthy every day, you're not going to feel that right away. But over time, it pays off. But think about like, what are you doing? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you working towards? And that's why I review my goals every day. That gets me motivated. I'm not really motivated by money, but sometimes I think money allows me to buy more toys. And I have all these instruments I want to buy for like some of these songs I've been writing. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to do this to get my money, but I also like need to like play some music every day. So like kind of finding that balance. Oh, Brandon, so Lori, so Allie, feel free to message me if you ever want to chat about that because I love talking about that. Lori, she knows Brandon Barnes, a friend of mine. He's from Pittsburgh. He's a Yinzer from Pittsburgh. He's a drummer friend of mine, great dude. He is a fellow curmudgeon. Brandon's a really solid person, solid drummer. If you're ever looking for a drummer in Nashville, I would say hire Brandon. And yeah, he's good musician, good person, responsible. He and I chat quite a bit, and we like to bellyache like 2 old men. But he's also a Stillage fan, Yinzer. So Zach's saying he started making YouTube videos and getting into making TikToks and a separate Instagram. Oh, that's great, Zach. I'm glad you're doing that. And you're probably going to do things differently than me. And that's not right or wrong. I think everybody like kind of finds these patterns and these paths that work for them, right? I've decided I don't want to do TikTok. It's just not my thing. I would rather be able to talk with people and develop real relationships and like develop an audience of people who are like wanting to engage instead of just like these quick bursts of action. So, but again, there's a lot of people that I know a guy is making like $10,000 a month on TikTok. He's a musician I play with and he uses that as part of his income. And that's a job for him and it's a grind, but he's making money off of it. That's what I'm saying. It's right or wrong. It's like, that's what works for him. So finding out what works for you is really, I mean, it's very much like music. Like what works for one person may not work for someone else. And we often see our peers doing these things and we try to be them, but sometimes that's not us. And it's hard to really tap into your true self. It's not easy to do. And I found that for me, the more time I spend online and social media, the more I'm trying to be like somebody else instead of like, well, who am I really? And that's another conversation for another day. But yeah, I'm going to sign off right now because I have a little bit of work here to do. But if anybody ever has any questions, feel free to shoot me email aaronaftermusic@gmail.com. I'm not always the best at getting back to messages right away. Things are going, a mile a minute here. But I wanted to say that I like to thank each and every one of you individually for watching. And why I do this is not for my ego. It is for, I wish I had somebody in Nashville talking to me like this when I got here. Because sometimes this stuff can be scary. And sometimes just having somebody with you saying, yeah, it is scary. And yeah, it's confusing. I don't know. That makes it seem more manageable. Not just in the music scene, but in life as well. And I really think that's what music's about. It's not always giving you the answer, but it's just like, oh, this is acknowledging that we all walk a similar path. We all struggle with certain things. We all have similar dreams. And yeah, you're not so weird and alone. I'm headed out to do some work here. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Be kind to one another. Use empathy, and yeah, it's things are going to be okay. Even if you feel like it's not going to be okay, take a deep breath. We write our own destinies. So I'm going to get to writing.